It was the coldest night of the year. The wind howled through the trees outside, and snowflakes danced in the air as they fell to the ground in a swirling pattern. The Miller family, like many others in the small mountain town, had retreated into the warmth of their homes. The warmth of their fireplace crackled softly in the living room, and the smell of fresh cocoa filled the air. It was meant to be a quiet evening, a time to relax and enjoy each other's company, far away from the noise of the outside world. Jason Miller, the father, had just finished tucking in his two kids, Lily and Ben, after a long day of playing in the snow. His wife, Sarah, was in the kitchen, preparing a late-night snack as the wind raged outside. The house felt cozy, like a fortress against the cold and the wild world beyond their doorstep. The night felt serene, almost magical, until the first loud bang echoed through the walls. Jason's head jerked up from the book he was reading. He shot a quick glance at Sarah, who had frozen in place, her hand still on the countertop. Another loud noise this time, a crash. It sounded like something had hit the back door. Sarah's face paled. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice tight with sudden fear. Jason stood up from his chair, instinctively heading toward the door. "I'll check it out," he said, trying to remain calm. The wind had picked up outside, and the storm was growing fiercer by the minute. It was possible a tree branch had snapped and hit the house, but Jason had a sinking feeling that something else was wrong. Another bang. The door rattled violently. Jason's heart pounded in his chest. There was no mistaking it now. Someone or something was trying to break into their house. His mind raced. Should he grab his gun? Should he call for help? But there was no time to think. The next sound made his blood run cold. A low, guttural growl that came from just outside the door. The hair on the back of Jason's neck stood up. He recognized the sound. It was a growl he had heard before, but only in his worst nightmares. A bear. Jason rushed to the back door, looking through the small window. His worst fears were confirmed. There, standing in the snow, was a massive bear. Its fur was thick and matted, and its eyes gleamed with a wild hunger. The bear wasn't just prowling around looking for food, it was intent on getting inside. "Sarah, call 911. Jason shouted, his voice filled with urgency as he backed away from the door, his mind racing. The bear was huge, twice the size of any black bear he'd seen. And it was getting closer, its enormous paws leaving deep prints in the snow as it clawed at the door. Sarah grabbed the phone, dialing as quickly as she could. Her voice trembled as she spoke to the dispatcher, trying to explain the situation through her panic. Jason stood frozen in place, staring at the bear as it circled the house, now trying to tear through the wood. The sound of splintering wood was deafening, and Jason realized that if they didn't act fast, the bear would break through. "Get the kids," he shouted to Sarah. "We need to get to the basement now." Sarah's eyes went wide with fear, but she didn't hesitate. She dashed up the stairs, calling for Lily and Ben, while Jason grabbed a large kitchen knife and stood in front of the back door, ready to protect his family with whatever he could. The bear let out another roar, more desperate than before. Jason knew it wasn't just hunger driving it, it was pure instinct. The bear had been caught in the storm, and it had come looking for shelter. And now, the Millers were its next target. As Sarah ushered the kids into the basement, Jason stood his ground in front of the door, the knife gripped tightly in his hand. The bear continued to claw at the door, its growls growing more intense with every passing second. The windows of the back door were rattling with the force of its blows, and Jason could see the large creature's massive form shaking the frame. Then, suddenly, something unexpected happened. The door, already weakened by the bear's relentless assault, gave way with one final violent push. It flew open, slamming against the wall as the bear charged forward. But just before the bear could step inside, a blur of motion appeared in the doorway, a dark shape, moving faster than Jason could process. It was another animal, a dog. The dog, a large, muscular shepherd, charged at the bear with a fearsome bark, its body low and ready to attack. Jason's eyes widened in disbelief. The dog wasn't running. It wasn't afraid. It was standing between the bear and his family, as if it were determined to protect them at all costs. The bear, momentarily stunned by the dog's sudden appearance, hesitated, its massive head swiveling toward the new threat. The two animals locked eyes. Then, without warning, the bear lunged at the dog, its claws swiping through the air. But the dog was quick, darting around the bear's massive paws, nipping at its legs, distracting it with every move. The bear roared, angry and frustrated, but it couldn't land a blow. Jason stood there, frozen, watching in awe, as the dog who had appeared out of nowhere stood its ground against the massive bear. The dog's eyes were fierce, filled with a protective instinct Jason had never seen in an animal before. It was as if the dog knew that its purpose was to protect these people. The bear roared again, but this time, it didn't seem as confident. It took a few cautious steps back, its ears flattening against its head. The dog, sensing the bear's hesitation, lunged forward with a snap of its jaws, and the bear finally backed off, retreating into the darkness of the storm. Jason stood there, heart racing, his breath heavy from the adrenaline. The dog didn't follow the bear. It simply turned and looked at Jason, as if waiting for a command. The storm raged on outside, but inside the Miller house, there was a new kind of quiet. The bear was gone, retreating into the wilderness, but the tension remained. Jason slowly lowered the knife as his eyes met the dog's. It was covered in scratches and mud, but there was no sign of retreat in its posture. The dog had protected them, and now, it stood there as if it were simply part of the family. Sarah and the kids, hearing the silence, slowly emerged from the basement, their faces full of confusion and fear. When they saw the dog, their eyes widened with surprise. "Where did this dog come from?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling with both relief and uncertainty. Jason, still shaken, knelt down to the dog's level. "I don't know," he said, his voice hoarse, "but I think it saved our lives." The dog looked at them for a moment, then turned and walked slowly toward the door, as if it were waiting to leave. Jason stood up and called out, "Hey, wait, you're not leaving." To his surprise, the dog turned back, its tail giving a small wag. It wasn't a long wag, but it was enough to make Jason smile. The family looked at each other in disbelief. They had just survived an attack from one of the most dangerous predators in the area, and it was a stray dog that had saved them. Over the next few days, the family tried to understand what had happened. The dog stayed around the house, guarding them whenever it sensed danger, but it never asked for food or shelter. It simply did its job protecting the family. Eventually, the Millers took the dog to the vet, where they discovered it had been astray for quite some time, wandering the forests and living off whatever it could find. It had probably been looking for shelter when it found the Millers' home. They never found out exactly how the dog had known to protect them, or why it had appeared just when they needed it most. But one thing was clear, the dog wasn't just a random animal. It had become part of their family. Months passed, and the dog, whom the Millers had named Bear, became a fixture in their home. Bear was never far from them, always watching, always alert. The family grew to love the dog, and they made sure to give him everything he needed to be comfortable. But even though Bear had been an unexpected visitor, he quickly became a member of the family. He no longer roamed the woods alone, searching for shelter. Instead, he had a home that he had fought for and protected. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a place of safety, of loyalty, and of love. And it was all thanks to the dog who had saved them when no one else could. The Miller family would never forget the night the giant bear tried to break into their home. But more than that, they would never forget the dog that stood between them and danger, proving that sometimes, the greatest heroes come from the most unlikely places.